An honor to be interviewed by you twice.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to have Tony Jenkins here today, who is adorned with a USS Capodanno. I need to hear about that.
Father Vincent Capodanno was a Marine Corps chaplain. He was a Medal of Honor recipient and killed in battle in Vietnam, tending to wounded Marines.
Wow.
And he was actually trying to get sainthood for Father Capodanno.
Oh,
Hasn't happened yet and may not happen, but he was a great man.
oh, wow. And how, what an amazing opportunity to serve on that ship.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And it was
great.
actually another story related to that.
Yeah.
Ironically, it was the only American warship ever blessed by a pope.
When did that
Yes,
happen?
this happened in the early 1980s when the ship was in Italy, and some of the family members had something to do with that. I'm not sure the full story, but it is ironic
That,
that Father Capodanno was, they were trying to make him a saint,
wow.
and the ship was blessed.
Oh, this sounds like it's the story of, movies and literature and so
Well,
on.
I
His
think
story needs to
a
be
lot
told.
of these ships are named after, a lot of the destroyer escorts
Yeah.
are named after gentlemen who were killed in action,
Wow.
or maybe not all of them.
but
But there's a story for every one of them.
oh my goodness, that's fascinating to know. Well, we need to know your story too. So now,
Okay.
your story. All right. So now, where are you from, Tony?
I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. And you enlisted in the Navy?
I enlisted in the Navy. I was 17. I had to have a note from my mom and dad.
Okay.
My father was a sailor in World War II,
Okay.
and my grandfather was a sailor in World War I.
Whoa, I like
And
the.
I hinted once at going into the Marines, but just for a very short period. It was a very short hint.
It wasn't taken up on. No, this wasn't a good idea. Okay. And so, where did you go to the Great Lakes for training for
I went to
basic?
Great Lakes boot camp, my first time out in the Midwest. And I was actually my first time out of Baltimore, out of the city. And I never knew there was anything else other than row houses out
Yeah.
there in the world. And from there, I met my ship in, actually, I flew down in Mayport, Florida, Naval Station Mayport, and my ship was just returning from the Persian Gulf. So I met my ship in Florida. I served myself. I went to every country in South America, several Caribbean islands, 3 tours of Guantanamo Bay,
Oh my.
Cuba,
Yeah.
Maine. So I've been a few places.
This sounds wonderful. What was it? Tell us about Guantanamo. My dad was in Guantanamo Bay in the Navy when Castro came into power and over through the Batista regime. But what did you see?
Well, there was I saw Marines guarding the perimeter
Yeah.
on the base. There's no Cubans were allowed on the base.
Could you
And-
go into Cuba at all?
No, we were not allowed to go into Cuba. There were many different people from different Caribbean nations who actually worked on the base as civilians.
Yeah.
And I do recall going to 3 Pink Panther movies and drinking this very, very watered down beer.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, it was a difficult time for us. We went there for what they call refresher training. So
Yeah.
before we deployed, we had to go there for trainings, and we trained 7 days a week from very early morning till late at night. And we went out and basically battle stations all day to train before we deployed.
Wow.
And it was a tough time.
Yeah. And now, were you near the Falklands?
I did make it down.
Okay.
I did. I encircled South America and went through the Straits of Magellan, through the Panama Canal, Straits of Magellan. Very beautiful.
Oh, and tell us about going through the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal. Well, there was a couple different feelings about going through the canal
Okay.
because you go through the locks. where they, I think take the water out of the ship and
Yeah.
you're going through. And then you go, there's a big lake, big waterway down there, and you feel like you're almost out on the ocean because it's so vast at certain
Wow.
parts. Straits of Magellan, where you cut off a lot of miles from going all the way down around the southern
Right.
tip of South America. You cut through down there, and snow-capped mountains as far as you could see. It's actually, and rows of them.
Wow. So the
Beautiful,
glaciers and so, yeah.
I think my experience in the Navy was, even though I served during wartime, I'm not a combat veteran. And I think my experiences, like many others, were ones of adventure, visiting exotic,
Yeah.
faraway places. And not every place was exotic. There was a lot of sea in the desert in some of these places.
That was, yeah.
And people who didn't, people who were hostile towards American even at that time. But I was just listening to a few of my buddies down at the American Legion talk about their time in Vietnam, and some of it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate that I never had to go through that. I think I think there was a time in my life where I was guilty that I didn't have to. I felt guilty because I didn't have to go through that. But that's all gone.
Good.
And I'm very thankful for my experiences in the military.
Right.
It shaped me for.
Yeah,
big part of
how?
my
Yeah, did it shape your career? Did the training? Did
Like-
it shape your character?
I think it shaped my character and a lot of my work ethic, my persistence in having a vision of something and being able to follow it through, find the resources or problem solve when things don't go as planned.
Great.
And I think it's definitely shaped my spirit, my feeling of
Yeah.
Americanism and patriotism.
That's wonderful. When you were first in the service and so on, did you get any care packages from home, or that that resonated
I
with
did.
you?
My mom was very, very special lady, very wonderful, gentle soul. She used to send me care packages from home, and back then there was no cell phones.
Yeah.
There were no emails. There were no FaceTimes on telephones. So care packages, and I remember waiting on the mess decks when they would come down for mail call, and you prayed that you heard your
Yeah.
name, and everything went through a fleet post office, so it's not like it came to us directly.
Yeah.
It went through the government first. My care packages consisted, I would have pictures, maybe she would cut out a thing about the Orioles, because I'm from Baltimore.
Oh, okay, yeah,
The
yeah.
Orioles
Okay.
or the Colts.
Yeah.
And she used to send my favorite snack, which was Tasty Cake Butterscotch Crimpets.
Oh, you must have loved when you saw
And I
that.
loved, and as even up until the time she passed away, she would send me packages, and she always sent me a few dollars on my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
It was very special.
That sounds wonderful. What do you remember about your commanding officers and so on? Did anyone, did you have one or more people that you felt were mentors to you, or
Well, there
people
were-
who were total pain in
Right.
the
There were some of both. Some of both. My commanding officers on the ship, I really didn't have a lot of contact
Yeah.
with them. I had a little bit of unfortunate contact one time that I'll talk about in a minute.
Okay.
But mostly the non-commissioned officers in my division. I spent time as a bosun's mate and as a cook.
Okay.
So I changed in mid-service
Okay.
from one rating to another. But there were some very remarkable people. I was 17 when I went in, very impressionable. And fortunately, there were people at that time in my life who were able to give me some good guidance and who were mentors and helped
Beautiful.
me to actually, years later, become a leader in a little bit of a way. But a funny story about my commanding officer,
Okay.
Captain Bill Buford, who's actually a Marylander. I went to see him for Captain's Mast once. And Captain's Mast is judicial punishment, so you don't want to go in front of the captain.
Yeah.
And I always felt bad about that through my entire life. At our ship's reunion, very first ship's reunion, I had wondered what happened to all these guys, and we had a ship's reunion in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, great.
So I'm sitting at a table, and it's open, and who comes up and asks if he could sit down? Our captain that I went in front of.
Oh,
And he and his beautiful wife, very lovely people. So, and I was skating around how I'm going to talk to him about this. And I felt I had the opportunity, I must talk about it. So halfway through, I mentioned to him, I said, Captain, I says, I don't know if you remember or not, but I had the unfortunate distinction of coming up in front of you for Captain's Mast one time. And he looked around, he said, most of these people in here came up in front of me for Captain's Mast.
so
And these, some great men, some combat veterans, very high-ranking folks, and most of them too. And that stuck with me all these years.
Redemption.
It's a funny story.
Yes. Now, I've known you and I've known your musicality for all these years. I know that you sing and you and so on. How did that happen? Did that happen for you in the service?
Well, before I went in the service, I can remember in the '60s listening to some of the old folk songs and the Beatles. The Beatles were very popular, and I liked them. And when I went into the service, I used to pal around with a machinist mate, Country Melvin Johnson from Tennessee or Kentucky, I believe Tennessee. And he was a great, great guitarist and sang all these songs. And I was a 50s nut at the time, 50s music nut at the time. So we would go around the bars, not only here in the continental United States, but when we were overseas. We would go in the bars, he would play and sing, and I would sing. And we would drink all night for nothing and make a lot of friends.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Spent a lot of time on the ship, but I've always loved music. I think it's one of those things that just make you feel good and all the time.
Right, absolutely. When you think back on your service, is there like one story or one incident that stands out that as one of your best service-related stories?
No, not really.
Okay.
Not really. I have a lot of fond memories from the service. A lot of great people that I met. And, but I was fortunate, I think, like I said, to have that adventurous experience, visiting new places. So I do have a lot of fond memories, but not any one in particular.
That's
Let me step back. I boxed in the Navy.
No, really?
Yes.
How did that? Tell me about that.
Well, it was one of the guys on the ship who was a boxer, professional boxer, and he was mentoring a lot of guys. A way to keep working out and I guess give back to others. So we were actually up in Bath, Maine, and they had a boxing event, and I was going to box, my first time boxing.
Oh, wow.
And I was a very rough kid from the streets of Baltimore. So we're in there, and I was very, I wouldn't say cocky, but I was very confident.
Yeah.
And this one kid walked in, and he was really buff and muscular. And I said to myself, and I said to my buddy, I said, I pity the guy that has to box this kid. Sure enough, I drew that card, and I had to box him. Now, and this kid came out wearing headgear, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not wearing any headgear. So I hit this kid about 100 times. Nothing. He just kept coming. He hit me once, knocked me out.
Oh my goodness!
And both my jaws hurt for about 2 weeks. So I guess that's a fun story. I remember like it was yesterday, him walking through that door and just muscles bulging out everywhere, and saying, "I pity the guy that has to fight this kid."
And there you were. Oh my goodness!
And I got it. So.
And you got it. Oh wow, wow. There's something about the structure and the training in the military that makes a group of people a unit. and be able to work well together and so on. Is that true? Do you?
Yeah, I was thinking about just the same thing this morning. I can name a lot of the different qualities or characteristics that how veterans are tied to one another. But I really trying to put my finger
Yeah.
on it. What is it that makes me so proud and others so proud to be veterans? I'm a member of the American Legion here in town, and I've always wanted to give back to my community some way and give back to others, and I just really never had a passion for anything. So now I've become a member of the American Legion, and I think I was born to do that.
Oh, that's
We
wonderful.
have this mutual helpfulness towards one another, towards veterans, towards their families, towards the community, just similar to some of the things you do, helping others and how generous you are. There's nothing I won't do to help a vet anywhere, but I don't know. At any given time, like I said, I'm not a combat veteran, but at any given time, I was trained, I was prepared to go, I was prepared to fight for my country and to follow these men who, as you said earlier, were mentors to me, and follow them anywhere and do so readily and confidently. But I don't know what it is. Maybe, maybe we just have a deep, deep love for America and, just the things that we've been through.
That's
And
great.
again, I salute every person who has ever served our country. It's a great experience. While my wife doesn't wish my children to serve because of the possibilities, I would love to see my children serve our country in the military, even though it's much different today than it has been in the past. And I guess you could say that for every era,
Yeah.
every generation. It's changed along with the political climate and the culture.
The technology and
I remember very vividly when I was a child watching some of my friends come back from Vietnam, and I'm just a little teary just thinking about it now.
Yeah.
These guys were over there in horrendous conditions, and they come back, and people would cross the other side of the street. I've never seen anybody spit on people, but I've heard many stories. But I have seen people grab their children and get them away from someone. They actually told these guys before they came back stateside to not wear your uniform because it wouldn't be to your benefit. So I always remembered that, and I couldn't wait to enlist, and I was ready to go over. I think I wanted to be a Marine because I wanted to get over in Vietnam, but fortunately it ended before I had a
Good
chance.
yeah.
I went in a year after Vietnam had ended.
Yeah, and so on. Oh, your words are so powerful. When people say to you, "Thank you for your service," how does it make you feel?
It's not clear to me actually. I don't want to be thanked for something that others have been through so much more than I have. I guess the hardest thing I had to do was all these push-ups and I did a lot of them.
I'm sure you did.
And be away from my family.
yeah.
Learning the stuff overseas. Like I said, there were people there who were confident and great mentors, and who I would follow into battle anytime. But I thank veterans for their service, and I often wondered, do I offend someone by thanking them? Because I know some people don't want to be thanked, or some people may get offended by that, which I don't understand. But I want to show my respect to those people. I think it's a great gesture, and I think, I was at a function once where a gentleman brought his son up and kind of, enticed him to say thank you to the veterans. And I really didn't know what to make of it. And I think it's great for the child to be doing that. They're doing a lot of other things that he could be doing to get in trouble. But it really doesn't have a clear meaning for me yet. And I'm searching for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tony. This was terrific.
Thank you, Lynn.